Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. The goal of the show is to share game-changing stories our guests are experiencing with themselves, their team, or what they're seeing in the industry. And time to time, I come on here and I share what I'm seeing. So today, I want to focus the conversation on discovery. And the reason I've chosen discovery is I do a lot of call reviews, and I still see that that's the most important. I feel it's you make it or break it in the discovery, but I still feel that that's the phase that most people struggle with. And, people are concerned with negotiations and discounting and closing. If you can't open it and uncover a problem, you don't need to worry about the back end stuff. So discovery is hugely important. And most recently, I was impacted by a poor discovery. So it also prompted me to talk about it because it occurs in every industry, regardless of what you're selling, unless it's very transactional. You need to discover. You need to understand what they're trying to solve, what problem they're trying to solve, what goal they're trying to achieve, and get questions to see if you're even in a position to solve their problem, if it's solvable, do you want to deal with them? Maybe your values don't align and you can solve it, but you don't want to deal with them. You need to discover. And in order to discover, we need to ask questions. They need to be we're trying to discover. So we need to ask questions and hear what it is, listen to what it is they're doing, what they've done to try to solve this problem. Is this problem worth solving? How frequent is it? And then at the end, make a conclusion. You know what? I think we can help you, incorporate some storytelling of how you've helped others, but you can't determine that until you've discovered. And that's the biggest thing. I see discovery calls turn into pitches and then demos all in one. So that's not the goal. The goal is to have a conversation, be very conversational, and try and understand what it is they're trying to achieve. Is it a problem or is it a goal? Okay. And then get into it, get the questions going, get the impact of not solving it. All these great questions. And, then there's the whole thing. Do I need a script or not? My belief is you need a framework. You need something to follow that's going to keep you in line, to keep you on track. If you have 30 minutes and if you don't have something that's going to keep you on track and they throw you a curveball or they ask you a question that goes off topic, what I see too often happening is that last 2 minutes, you're scrambling and you leave the call. There's no next steps and there's nothing in the calendar. So if you go back to Challenger Sale and they have the 3 T's, you want to teach a tailored message while taking control. Part of that control is managing the time, managing the meeting. The currency we trade in now is time. So I've actually added a 4th T there, and that's Mr. Capone, the transparency. So teach a tailored, transparent message while taking control. And when I say teach, this is by sharing insights, educating them, because sometimes they don't know what their problems are. They know that something's not right. And by sharing insights, we can help them, and storytelling, we can help them perhaps see themselves in the story and give it more color and realize, wow, this is pretty great. I didn't realize that, that if it goes unaddressed for much longer, we're going to be in trouble. Okay. So a lot of the data that I use is backed by Gong, and Gong in their discovery suggests 2 criteria. The first one is that the prospect has to acknowledge that they have a problem. So it's not me, happy ears, thinking you have a problem. You have to acknowledge you have a problem. You're not in denial. You're aware, I have a problem. This isn't working. If you're not willing to do that, the second criteria is you acknowledge that status quo is no longer an option. And that just shows the commitment to change. So you're flexible, you're willing to work with me, and that's what you need. And if you don't have either one of those commitments, I'm sorry, but that deal's going nowhere because you are working with somebody who doesn't feel they have a problem. What do you have to solve? What are you trying to discover? They're good. Okay, so we need to get it from the customer that they have a problem. If they don't know it, that's when we can educate them, share some insights, paint a picture before and after that helps them come to realize that they do actually have a problem. It might be small, but they might want to wait 6 months, or they might say, "Look, if we don't address this now, it's going to be a lot of trouble, a lot of hassle in 6 to 12 months from now." And that's where we have that industry knowledge and that business acumen. This is, I've been here before, and I've worked with customers who are in the exact same position and they didn't address it, and this is what happened. Or that they did address it and this is a success they see. People are buying your outcomes. So that's a teaching part, but we have to also tailor it to the industry, to the role. So we're social proofing, but apples to apples. I'm not comparing Amazon to some boutique shop in southwestern Ontario. Okay, it's got to be apples to apples. So a few things with discovery I'm going to go through. Again, think about the word discover. We're trying to discover. So in order to discover, I'm going to talk. I'm going to ask some questions that's going to help me discover, but I'm going to ask the questions that's going to get you talking. And when I ask the question, I'm either going to hit the mute button on my Zoom call, or I'm just going to have some self-control not to talk. Okay, listen. They're going to tell you everything. But when you listen, you start building trust. You disarm them because they're used to, being the sales show. And it's actually, it almost feels unnatural because they're not used to getting airtime. So you might get a different response in that, wow, you're making this about me. I'm not used to it being made about me. Okay, so absolutely listen. Tone is so important. We want to be conversational. We want to speak to them, not creating this hierarchy of I'm better than you, I know what I'm talking about, but you have to be confident and capable. But like you're just talking to a friend. Your friend's going through a bad situation, and you want to hear them out. You want to understand what got them in this situation. What have they done to kind of get out of it, and can you help them? I don't know if I can help you yet. I need to understand more. So what I see too often happen in discovery calls is, instead of discovering and trying to seek to understand, it turns into a pitch. There's a bit of demo happening, and you're just going through all the motions. And it's like, keep it a discovery. Hold it for what it is. And then if everything works out, move to the next phase. But don't jump too far ahead, because what happens is you're missing very key information. And this key information screws you later. If you haven't asked some pointed questions, you've invested all this time, you've pulled every resource from your company, and the deal's dead, and it was never going to go up in the first place. So there's a lot of very pointed questions that you need to know. And this is, again, where the framework comes in. And over time, you'll need less of it, but I still think a guideline to keep you on track. Also, when you have that, it gives you the freedom to dance in the moment and really engage and immerse and be others focused, because you know where you're going. You have a roadmap, you have that path. And when you don't have that, you're very rigid and you're very robotic. You go, okay, number one, and now number two. And it's like, stay on one. They just gave you something really good. Get the impact. What's happening? How often is that happening? What's it costing you? Holy cow, what does that mean for your position? Did you have to lay people off? Like, in the moment. And if you don't have that framework down pat, you're moving on to two, and you've missed a huge opportunity in point or question one. So I believe a framework is imperative. And if you want to talk about framework, the first thing I do is the purpose. Why are we having this call? Something's happened. You've accepted my call. Something's going on. What is that something? Share it with me. But if my tone is not inviting a conversational, they're not going to share it. Okay. Part of that now, when you add video, is eye contact. Am I making eye contact? If I'm using a double screen and I'm looking over there, they don't know that. So they think, oh, she's working on a presentation, she's doing something, she's not invested. How are they going to build trust, and how am I going to disarm them? So really make it about them. Be very intentional, be very focused. And a lot of that is with your tone. So just think about, experience you've had when someone comes at you and their tone is very, they're like they're doing a keynote. It's like, we're just trying to talk here. Let's be human. Let's connect human to human. Let's disarm, because I'm asking you to share problems with me. You don't really know me that well. So to do that requires trust. So I'm going to do as much as I can to disarm you, create a safe space, and tone plays a huge role in that. So once you have the tone, purpose, why are we on this call in the first place? How long do we have? Always confirm the time and just say, you know what, John, I had us down for 30 minutes. Does that still work for you? You know what, Karen, I got to cut it short to 20 because my whatever reason. Okay. Now, mentally, because I have that framework, I can either cut out the middle part or I can condense all three of my points, whatever I need to do, but I have to act on the fly. And I know where I can do that. Otherwise, what I see happens if you don't confirm the time, at the 20-minute mark, they let you know. And that's the big value piece that doesn't end up getting shared. Or one of the decision makers has to leave at 20 minutes and you didn't ask that. And then they miss, the golden moments. So absolutely confirm the time. And another thing is, don't hold that last piece for the end, the golden moment. I lead with it. They're all waiting for it, especially like that last example. If your main decision maker's leaving and you don't even know that, they're all waiting for it. Give them to them up front. Let them know what that amazing new thing is that you're doing or whatever it is you want to share. Lead with it. Okay, get them excited up front. So purpose, time, how much time do we have? And the last one is, that upfront contract. So what's the end goal? Typically at the end of this call, we're in a position where we either agree that, we can solve your problem and we start, looking at a potential demo or bringing other people's in, or we realize, what, it's not really a good fit and we go our open ways. So in order to do that, I'm going to have a few questions for you. I'm sure you're going to have some questions for me. And then at the end, we'll decide if, what way we want to go. Does that work for you? Very conversational. Yeah, sure. Okay. Because then when you're going to ask these questions, they know they're coming. I've told you I'm going to ask the questions. You're going to ask me questions. They've agreed to that. You've got their permission that you can go ahead and do that. Okay. But nobody likes to be caught off guard. And at the very end, if you say, okay, so now are we ready to move to that whatever phase? And they look at you like, I didn't know we were going there. Like, why didn't you tell me? I had so many questions. No, we can't go there. I'm not prepared. So avoid surprises. Let them know what the purpose is for this call and where you want to take them, because they get into that mental mindset. Okay, I have to think about the questions for this call, but also what's needed to move to that next phase. Who needs to be involved? Maybe I need to, bring other people in the meeting, but whatever it is, let them know to increase your chances of that actually happening. Okay. So we have the purpose of the call, we have the time, we want to confirm the time we have, and we have now our end result, where we're going. Everyone's aligned, we're good. I use something called the rule of three. And in communication, what it is we speak in threes. And the reason is because it's very memorable. There's a lot of reasons, but really we can all remember three things. So going back to the framework, if I have, if I've designed the discovery into three areas, what that allows me to do is if we go off topic or someone has a question and we really, or they throw me a curveball on that first point, I can come back and I know where I am in the sequence, still keeping that 5 minutes always at the end for follow-up for next steps. But if I don't have that, I come back and the structure's gone. And then the purpose is gone, because what I've shared with them, why we're here in the first place, is no longer. I'm all over the place. So when I speak in threes, it allows me to know what point I'm on, 1, 2, or 3. You might have 4 or 5 points, but you can still have sub-points within them. So you can have categories, okay, that you can say, okay, it can be, design, develop, deliver. Well, needs analysis is part of the design. Okay, so there's subcategories, but when you think in threes, it's very easy for you to know where you are, but also for your audience. This might be the first time that they've had a discovery meeting, that they're looking at your product, you as a vendor. And so at the end of this, when they leave and they go back to their team and they say, what did Karen talk about? Oh, I don't remember it all, but it was design, develop, deliver. They can remember 3 things, whereas your competitors might be talking about 10, 11 things, and it's overwhelming. It's too much. And what happens is they do nothing. Okay. It's heavy. So I always speak in threes. And then finally at the end, or actually before we get to the end, what I see is so often the salesperson, it becomes a monologue. And it's just them talking, pitching, demoing, and you've lost your audience because, especially in virtual, you need to be engaging every 3 to 5 minutes, asking them questions, getting them to do something, some kind of validation or confirmation. But if you think about your original purpose is to understand what it is they're trying to achieve or problem they're trying to solve, and you don't check in with whatever you're sharing, whether it's an insight, an example, how you've helped someone in the past, a spec, get their feedback as to, do you find this helpful? Do you feel that this will help you achieve your goal? Know where you're standing. Is what you're sharing getting you further or closer to what they're trying to achieve? And so often I hear, does this make sense? That doesn't tell you anything. It's insulting. Does this make sense? I just think, what are you programmed to say? Does this make sense? Yep. Even though you have no clue, we're not going to put our hands up and say it doesn't make sense. So remove that question from your vocabulary and think about open-ended questions. It's going to get them talking about how it will work, how they do see it helpful. Okay, great. What about it do you think is helpful? What about it is useful? People just end too quickly. Stay on that, dance in it, because you're getting more information about what part of your solution is beneficial for them. This is the tailoring part of the 4 T's. You take this into your demo and you show them this part. You tie it back to the discovery, but stay on it. Also, when you're checking in, you might get negative feedback. You might say, okay, so you know what, this is something we wouldn't use, or we actually don't like that. Okay, interesting. So what about that? Don't be afraid to go there. No, negative, it's still feedback. You still need to understand this. Okay, interesting. So what about it do you think wouldn't support it? Okay. And so is this based on what your current system does? Like, where is this coming from? And you want to be mindful here that you're not coming across as very accusatory. So I always say, like, in your opinion or in your experience, where is this coming from? Okay, so it's just not why. The minute you go why, people's back gets up and they feel they're being interrogated, and then they're just going to tell you what you want to hear to get off the call. So keep that conversational tone, but be very curious. I'm just curious as to, in your opinion, why do you feel that wouldn't solve? What specifically about this do you feel wouldn't meet, your criteria, your needs? Okay. And get and stay on that again. But I think people, they don't get the answer they're looking for and they move on. And I just think, hold that. And you know what? Probably when I was 23 or 24, I might have done the same thing. But now, you're there to discover. And at the end of it, if I haven't asked the right questions to fully understand the problem you're wanting to solve, but more importantly, think about the language you're using and who you're talking to. Is this below the line? Okay. So if you're talking to a user, this problem is a below the line. How does this fit or tie into above the line? So what is this problem? What can I align it to as one of your overall corporate objectives? You always want to tie it back to something they're already working on. Why reinvent the wheel? The beginning of the year, the CEO stands up and says, these are the 3 to 4 initiatives or objectives we're trying to achieve. Can you not tie yours into one of those and kill 2 birds with 1 stone? So know where you are on the micro level, the problem you're solving. Know where that problem fits in on the macro level. So you always want to tie it back. And that's crucial because depending on who you have in your audience, you need to be speaking the language and the value proposition of both below the line and above the line. So don't be afraid of hearing no. If it's not meeting their needs, you need to understand what about the solution is not, and really understand the motivation. Where are they coming from? Why are they saying that? There's something bigger there that is our job to really drill down and see what it is. Again, tying it into that higher, bigger picture is always important. And I think as you go and they're sharing, some of their challenges, their goals, it's always important to share or build in an insight or some storytelling that shows them how you've helped others. So you're doing some social proofing, letting them know that you are capable in this industry, in this particular problem, and you've helped others. And the reason we share stories is because people remember stories and there's an emotional connection and we buy on emotion. So I think, you kind of, if you think about they're sharing their, 2 to 3 problems or challenges they're having, after you've ask some questions. So, what's the frequency? What is this costing you? Every time the system goes down, what is that costing approximately? That's never done enough. quantify the pain, put a dollar amount on it. It makes it a lot harder to digest when they know the frequency and what it's costing them every time. Another huge question is, what is the cost of not solving, or the risk of not solving this? You need to know that, because sometimes it's nothing. We just carry on business as usual. Other times it's, well, Karen, if we actually don't have a solution in place before the end of the year, we lose budget, or we have to lay off people. Whatever that impact is, you need to know that, because that's going to impact your timeline. That is a sense of urgency. You're not creating a false sense of urgency. That is urgent. And if something happens and they're kind of ghosting you, you drop back to, I'm a little confused here, because based on what you shared with me, if you don't achieve this, you lose budget. So, let's get this back on track. But definitely asking those questions, and really staying in the moment, and not being afraid to hear the negative or the no's, because there's always insights in those. So storytelling, again, the emotion, we're sharing insights, and our job here is to really paint that before and after story, or before and after picture, so that they can see themselves in the picture. Sometimes people jump to the after the pitch, and they haven't fully acknowledged or immersed themselves in the problem. So we need to paint the picture of the problem, the before, and the language, the emotion, and let them see themselves, and get to the impact. So there's a little bit of frustration there, going, yeah, this is us. Only then will that future state resonate with them. But too often people are pitching, and it's like, I don't even have a problem. I'm not really this. I'm not biting, because you've jumped to the after stage. You got to get to the before stage. I always say, think about the foundation around them. You have to crack it a little bit, or you have to show them that it's not so stable as they once thought. And what you're doing is, this is insights. You're teaching them something about themselves, their industry. You're imparting knowledge or insights that gets them thinking differently and openly. And the best thing the best line they can share is, wow, I've actually never heard of that before. I've never thought about it like that way. You've taught them something. That's exactly what you want. And that's how you're going to stand out, because everyone else is asking the same typical questions that are found on their website. Don't be that person. Get into their mindset of what information do I need to help them, or to better understand if I can solve their problem. So think about, the end in mind, and say, like, what do I need as a salesperson? What do I need to be able to solve their problem? And reverse back. These are the questions, or this is the information I need. And part of that's in your CRM system, but you don't want to sound, okay, so we're going to populate line 4, 5, and 6 together. You want to create a human connection, but really think back about what information do I need in order to determine if I can solve them. But get deeper. You want to get to the emotion. You want to get to the emotion. You want to get to the impact of not solving this problem, so that they're motivated. They're stoked about, yeah, we got to move on this. Okay. It's your job to get that excitement, or even that frustration, get it moving by sharing stories, and just painting a picture that they can see themselves in, that they're not happy with. And your solution, which you're going to work on together, you're going to co-create it, is going to get them to that happy phase. That's what they want. So the last part is, you're going to bring it full circle. You've kind of stated at the beginning what the end result should be. Now you've gone through the meeting, you've checked in along the way, you've asked questions and answers along the way. So a lot of things I see is that last slide is questions. It's too late then. You got to embed the questions as you go, and you ask questions, ask pointed questions, get them talking. So when people say any questions, that's the same thing as does this make sense? What are we programmed to say? Nope. Okay, so I always say, what questions do you have to me as it relates to, and get a particular section. Okay, that means I know you have them. What are they? And if there's silence, I say, typically people at this stage, what they're asking or what they're thinking about is, the implementation, and who's going to be involved, and what kind of support we have. Trigger their mind to start getting into the question. Don't leave with no questions. So have some questions planted if you have silence there. But I would always, don't wait to the last slide before you summarize. You can say, before we close up, I just want to open it up to questions. And I'm just going to start by what questions do you have, just as it relates to the last part, the implementation, or, whatever you just talked about. That's taking control of the conversation. It's letting you know that we're going to close right after this. But before we do, I'm going to field some questions now. Okay. And the reason is if you leave the questions to last and you have somebody who maybe had a negative experience, who's read a review or something, and they share that with the group leaves with a bad taste in their mouth, and they've controlled the last word in the message, and you have not been able to do that. So if you can get the questions up front before you close off or before you summarize or before you get into next steps, you've controlled the message. Everything after that is, your summary, your next steps. They're leaving on a positive versus a negative. So it could have been a great discovery, and then the last 2 minutes someone says, oh, I read this review and I heard so and so had a bad experience, we're not going there. Or, can you share a little bit more about that? That may have happened and you might have to do it, but don't leave it the very last thing, because that's a very last thing. That's how you're going to be remembered by. Okay. So I would say summarize first. Before you summarize, ask those questions, get those questions out. What questions do you have for me? And not over everything, break it down so it's more in this part, in this part, in this part, because it's too much. If they think about 30 minutes, like, oh gosh, that was so long, I don't even know what questions I have for you. Okay. And then you're going to say, okay, so at the beginning of this, we said that usually or typically we're at a place where we move on to the demo. So based on our conversation today, based on our findings, do we feel collectively we're in a position to move to the demo? You want to get consensus. So you want to go around the room and hear from everybody. Yes, 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 we are. If we're not, don't be afraid of that no again. Okay, so where do we need to explain? Where do we need to further get insights, dig deeper? It might be another calls required. It might be something so small that you can clarify right now. Okay. So absolutely gain consensus from the group that you've achieved everything you needed on this one. You have now buy-in to move to that next step. You have everyone on the call right now. Don't lose this opportunity to get that consensus. And if you don't have it, what is it we need? Get that locked down and book the next call to dig into whatever that outstanding item is to move. Once you lose momentum, you're stalling a deal and it dies. Okay. So you want to keep the flow going. And the beauty of this is you've already told them at the beginning of this what the expectations are. Typically, this call, the purpose is this. At the end of this, we should be here. I've told them that. Now you're just saying, are we here? Are we ready to move forward? And you either get a yes or no. If we are, you carve out those next steps. You send a meeting invite on the call. Who else could benefit from this call? Maybe there's more people that's required. Okay, get the invite, get a placeholder involved. Whatever you need to do. If it's a small group, get the calendars out then and there. If it's a larger group, still secure a placeholder with most of the stakeholders there. If you need to change it, at least there's a placeholder. There's a physical reminder. You always want the deal moving or confirmation from the buyer side. If they see that calendar invite, there's no happy years there. They see it. Okay. It's something physical. So that's how you're going to end it. You're going to end it with your next steps and that meeting locked in place. One thing I told you I was going to share a story. I'm going to share a quick story about what happened to my husband and I this weekend as we were going to test drive a pickup truck. We've never had a pickup truck in our life. So we're looking at one as a third car, and made an appointment to test drive one at a dealership. Showed up at the dealership, and the salesperson never asked, is this a first car? Is this a second truck? What are you using it for? Like discovery questions, because then he's in a position to put us in the right truck, budget everything. And none of that was done. So we got in this 2018 truck, took a drive, didn't know anything because we didn't know what we didn't know. Came back and we kind of gave him some feedback. And then he's like, you know what? Not that one. You need this one. He points to another truck and he's like, oh, no, you need this one. And I just thought I was in the Twilight Zone. And I just said, what are you basing this off? You haven't asked us one question. Are you trying to shift your inventory and just, get your September numbers up? And I just, my husband, because he knows what I'm like and he had to try to muzzle me, but I'm like, no. So what occurred to me is, in any industry, irrespective of what you're selling, you need to discover, you need to understand what problem you are trying to help your customer solve. And had he asked us those questions or what goal we're trying to achieve, what our timeline is, what our budget, he could have put us in a car or a truck that met most of those needs, but we would be in a way closer to making a purchase. And none of that was done. And going back to the currency we trade in is time. So my time was wasted. His time was wasted. He started the call by saying, I'm going to make a sale today. And I just thought, if you're that seller focused and you have the audacity to say something like that, like you're already going to lose. But just take the time to be others focused and discover, what problem are you trying to solve? What have you done to try to solve it? What's stopping you? What's impacting? Why now? Like, what something happened imminently recently that you're like, I need to pick up the phone. What is that trigger? Why now? That's a big question. What's the cost of not solving this problem? So all these things to really help you run an effective discovery. So if you want to learn more, we have sales modules virtually. We do face-to-face in all phases of the sales process. And we're launching a self-directed online learning, the K2 Sales Academy, in the fall. And you can either sign up individually or you can sign up with your team, and you can go through the various modules. Discovery is one of them, but it's a crucial part of it. And with these programs comes a coaching element. So I think, for sales leaders who are listening to this, if you're going to implement, a discovery framework, you need to be also working with your team to reinforce it, to sit on calls with them, to do call reviews, and make sure, listen to how they're doing it. Like, is it conversational? Are they asking the right questions? Are they pausing? What's their talk to listen ratio? Are they getting impact? Are they storytelling? Are they getting next steps? All these things. Otherwise, it's confirmation bias. Yeah, it was great. Meanwhile, they didn't ask any of the questions required to advance the deal and keep the momentum going. So it's equally important for the salespeople to, take some ownership and really get good at discovery. Record your calls. Watch yourself. Watch your prospect's body language. Listen to your tone. Are you pausing? This is the first time they've heard this stuff. Are you pausing to let it sink in? Asking open-ended questions, getting them talking. Near the end of the call, you can start close-ended them a little bit to start directionally positioning them to close the call and, and where you want to take them next. But at the beginning of the call, get them talking. That's what you want. You want to discover, keep to the true sense of discover. So any questions, if anyone's looking for more information on how we can support you in the discovery, because again, I think it is the most important part of the sales process, please reach out. And hope you enjoyed today's podcast/rant. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.